Any encounter with the Zentrum should be handled with a sword, not with diplomacy and bargaining. Hello and welcome to Liam's Lyceum. I'm your host Liam, aka Himbar, and today I'll be doing a spoiler-free review of Elaine Cunningham's Elfshadow. Elfshadow is a 1991 novel by Elaine Cunningham and book 2 in the series about the Harpers, called The Harpers, but actually not a really connected series. I have read book 1, which is the Part C. I reviewed that a year or two ago. But this one, again, separate series pretty much. It's also book 1 in the Songs and Swords, pentology, I think. There is a 6th book actually for that was planned but was canceled though. Maybe we'll get it someday. This was actually my first Forgotten Realms novel by Cunningham, but my second novel by her, which is kind of a long time coming as she's one of the more popular Forgotten Realms authors, though I have read some of her Forgotten Realms short stories before this. And as time of recording this, since I'm so far behind my reviews, I've read the next 2 books in this series. The story starts with an elf tracking in the woods. His name is Finian Nitesin. He is a gold elf and tracks a gray elf and her human companion. This is an assassin that hates King Zaor and the duo. We learn some of Evermead royalty, including Amnestria Moonflower, and the year seems to be 1321 DR, and this is all a prelude to the rest of the story, though. The story proper begins with the temple of Hanali Selenil, Seldarine, the elven pantheon goddess of love and beauty, kind of like the elven version of Sune Firehair, in the Grey Cloak Hills of Everesca. Erilyn, a half-elf, is quiet and in shock as she mourns her murdered mother, Zaberil. She's only 14 years old. It's 1334 or 1335, somewhere around there. With her mother's death, she met her distant kin and gained a Moonblade, and we are quickly introduced to Kaimil Nemesin, one of her heroes, though they've never actually met. It's because of his fighting prowess. Erilyn must decide what to do now, and it seems something to do with the blade is inevitable. She is skilled at combat, having been trained by her mother Zaberil, but again, quite young here, but again, we're going to fast forward as well. But the tone does start somber, and death really sets the mood. The Moonblade is an interesting weapon tied to elves, and it's actually deadly to those wielding them that are not accepted by the blade. It just kills those it doesn't accept, and it can't accept anyone doesn't at least have some elven blood. There's also more magic inherited in it, and it must be discovered by Erilyn, though she is kind of the odd one out, as most Moonblades don't accept anyone besides full-blooded elves. In a way, this is kind of a coming of age. We learn about Arlen as she learns about herself, including her heritage. It's a bit obvious at parts, but it's well executed overall, and it's entertaining. Most of the story, she's an adult. She has dealings with the Zentrum, Harpers, and others. Most notable is Danilo Thon, known as her partner. He also graces the cover with Erilyn. This is kind of their origin story. He's also a Waterhavian noble that acts like a spoiled and witless fop while actually being rather competent as a spy and wizard, trained by the Blackstaff himself, who is his uncle. The two meet via a mutual relationship with one Rafe Silverspur. The plot is focused on a few things. After the events of the novel Crusade, Zentrum power in the region, particularly from Darkhold, has increased greatly. There was also a murder of some clergy of Sune, and their lives cannot be recovered, but their relics can, so an assassin is sent by the Harpers as the local government's hands are tied. Hence Arlen, who is not a Harper, but hired by them. This leads into an assassin that targets Harpers going after her, and there's some mystery involved on the identity of that assassin. So she gets her hands dirty. The book is surprisingly sexual, though this is done via innuendo. Also, a certain scene with an incomplete manuscript is nothing short of poetic. It really casts into light our concepts of good and evil and paints Arlen as more gray than anything else. This is 1361 DR for most of the story, I believe. I learned more about Darkhold and the Priestess Cyric than I was expecting. We get some elf words like Etriel and Quasar and a farewell used by elves. Also, that gray elf is generally a derogatory term for moon elves. Arlen deals with misogyny too, which is nice to read and somewhat unexpected for a D&D novel from the early 90s. Not the misogyny itself, but dealing with it, I guess. Her character, acknowledging it too. Her character depth is expanded by references to prior adventures and the Time of Troubles. She also doesn't like magic outside of her own Moonblade, in particular to the Time of Troubles. A great map showing the Sword Coast with Waterdeep and Candlekeep, noted along with Darkhold, Chellenber Marsh, the High Moor, and High Forest, and halfway in is present in the book. You can actually see it on the screen now. Also, the character of Elaith Kronober is a pretty interesting one, though I think his name is actually misspelled in this book. I've seen artwork of him, but not seen him in any story, so it's kind of nice to actually be introduced to him. The Black Staff also has a decent page count in this one. It's cool to see a Pewafwi show up outside the Underdark as well. There are also some game mechanics coming in, like spot hidden doors. I did not know that Evermead was mentioned in works like this before the D&D cookbook, where it is one of the items you can make. And most importantly, and to conclude, I'm very impressed with Cunningham's take on the Forgotten Realms. While the more popular series, you could say, feels kind of cartoony and almost like fan fiction, Cunningham brings the world to life with great characters and atmosphere and things I could use in my own D&D games. It's also the start of a great duo akin to Liber's Ilmet and Linkmar. I mean, a little different, of course, but it's got good humor. No wonder I think she is highly regarded among fellow Realms fans. Also, this was her debut, and while it sure feels cliche at times, it's very fast, where a modern author would make it at least 100 pages longer. It is effective by itself and at the start of something bigger, and I very much enjoyed it.